I'm Rick, and welcome to the channel. Right, we're talking about the big man of the woods, the Sasquatch. Right, Bigfoot. When I was a kid, there were wild stories, always stories of this sort of creature. This was a big thing back in the 70s. It was I grew up in Iowa, still live in Iowa, and pretty much every state in America has some areas that are considered wilderness, although some are more wild than others. Obviously, the Great Northwest. When we compare the Great Northwest to the Great Northeast, for example, Washington State and Maine, that kind of stuff. Truth is, Maine is far less wilderness than the Northwest is, and in large part is because although it's still kind of the population levels aren't that great in some of those northeastern states and the eastern Canadian provinces, but the sheer amount of industry that goes on, logging is a big thing. For example, that means lots of people go out into lots of places on a regular basis, and this happens more and more in the Northwest too. So you get up into Canada, Western Canada. There are Alaska, Western Canada. There's a lot of really wilderness areas, wild areas that very few people ever go to. And I imagine there are still some tracts of, North America that, or for that matter, anywhere in the world that nobody goes to. To suggest that everything is completely unexplored is laughable at best. It's ignorant at worst. It means you're stupid. If you really believe that, you're a fool. I'm sorry, but you're a fool. With all the satellite technology and overflights and all this other crap, the whole entire world's surface has been mapped. Google Maps, for example. But that said, there are entire areas, hundreds and hundreds of square miles of pristine wilderness that rarely see human beings. The odd in a hunter or adventurer, maybe a couple people a year, a handful of diehard frontier people that want to live that back to earth kind of really primitive lifestyle, or the off the gridders. So it's getting harder and harder for these elusive creatures to stay hidden. Right? So as a kid, I really believed in these guys, and I still do part of the time. Part of the time. I want to believe in them. Let's just leave it at that. I just want to believe in them because that's just damn cool. And it adds a whole lot of conjecture and interesting coffee table conversation with the right people. The idea being, it varies. There's a lot of different theories and what they may or may not be or may have been. Right? You would still need to have several thousand of them that can connect with each other to have a viable breeding population, because anything falls below 4,000, you can get, it's dodgy at best. They say the bare minimum for healthy human rehabilitation is about 500 humans need to survive. So out of the entire population of the world, if something catastrophically destroys 99.9% of us, that last 0.1% or less is still going to be far sufficient numbers to repopulate the world in time. Right? We're not going to likely die off unless something directly affects the human as directly, like a virus that kills us all. Even except for the most worst case scenarios of asteroid strike or World War III on the massive scale, even then, the percentages are good that enough humans are like cockroaches in a way. If there's a way to survive, we will survive. So originally, back in the day, they thought maybe this was like missing link to humanity's past, or a lost great ape. I mean, orangutans and gorillas, they're pretty beefy, they're powerful, they throw a human around, break you and twist you up and break you in half. So these fellows, 6 to 8 feet tall, make a gorilla look sick. Making an orangutan and a gorilla would think twice about tangling one of these boys. They run into them one on one. That said, another problem I have with our accessibility to technology today, trail cams, security cameras, everybody's got phones with cameras in them. And we still see stuff on the internet. And I've watched videos over the years, and some of them are like, if you look real careful, if you really see it hard, it's there, looking in the thing, behind the thing, blending in with the thing. Okay. There's a fancy term, and I'll be damned if I can tell you how to even begin to pronounce it, let alone pronunciate it correctly. And I'm not 100% sure exactly what the term is. I know the term, I've heard the term, in my brain, it's just popping loose. It's not something I throw around it at all. So it's that people see patterns. We will see patterns in things that are not there. We see things because our imagination, our mind rebels at a void. We need to visualize or sensualize, i.e., through our senses, something. And then if not, then our imaginations will fill in the holes. And this is where we can see a whole lot of things that are really not things. The most common basic that is clouds. And you look up the cloud, oh, that looks like an elephant. That looks like a truck. That kind of see. So we're looking at shapes and images and shadows and play on shadows and light manipulation and finding things in those that are that aren't there. So the truth is, we have very little hardcore evidence, even today, that Sasquatch exists. On that side. On this side, Sasquatch sightings are creatures similar enough to Bigfoot have been sighted all over the world. We have, and I can't think of the Yeti, for example. That's the biggest one that most people know, think of. That's in the Himalaya mountains, the Chinese mountains, and then there's another one in South America or something, I think, or was, and then another one over in East Asia that I can't think of what they called it too. But every culture, every ancient culture that thrives and exists today, have stories of the big man in the woods. And generally speaking, when I listen to folklore versus historical lore. This is, say, a tribal lore for the Native Americans. Their lore goes back hundreds of years, thousands of years. They have stories that they have told and retold and told again down the generations. Now, of course, it's like a game of telephone. Over time, things get distorted, things get changed, tonal concepts change. Clearest example of that is if you look at the modern version of the Christian Bible and you compare it to the King James version of the Christian Bible, they've tried to modernize the verbiage and make the words sound like we understand them in our vernacular today, versus the much more archaic turn of the century 1900 format that the King James is written in. That's part of the, it's a necessary thing, but you risk losing something every time something's translated and into a new language. So the meaning and depth and nuance of older words may no longer be the same in modern language, and other words that are benign or just basic in ancient languages in our modern era become something to become dramatic for some anal reason. So we have to keep that in mind, that we have a tendency to see things that ain't there, fill in the blanks, and then there's this cultural belief that these beings have existed. So we believe, so either they're this lost great ape or they're aliens. Right? Then there's the Neanderthal feeling that perhaps their descendants, they're evolved from Neanderthals. At some point in human history, the Homo sapiens, us, diversified from the others. And we even grew to the point where we were in conflict with our ancestors, were in conflict with the Neanderthals for pretty much everything. And we could do a whole video on just the Neanderthals and how what we've come to understand them to be, and things have changed. There's a dangerous problem with a lot of academia in the world, and it doesn't matter. We're not just modern time. We go back as far back as you want to go, and it's that They get closed-minded. Once they've decided, or as a group, that certain things are, accepted, then they will rebel against anything does not fit that bill. And they will decry it, they will denounce it, they will ignore it, which is foolish. Because it's like science. This is when we say, well, absolute zero is absolute, until it's not absolute. Now, I grant you that in all from mathematical perspective, absolute zero is just that, absolute. Unfortunately, the universe doesn't always work in absolute. Sometimes we find evidence, and a lot of times it's right in front of our face, that that we got it wrong. And if we're not willing to be open-minded about at least the possibility that all we think we know is incorrect or is misunderstood, then that's going to take its toll. Yes, that's going to take its toll and have its inverse effects. So to make that carte blanche statement that blah. So one of the earliest images, this female Sasquatch here, and pretty much almost everybody agrees this one is supposed to represent a female. Now it comes out that the person who filmed this, it's said late in his last days, admitted that it was fake, that they had staged it for publicity, and that this was a man in a suit, and that man was a big tall dude, and they had a lot of padding going on in there, if that's true. And very well may be. It's like when people quit there, well, the moon landing was faked. Scorsese did the moon landing or whomever, right? And I'm thinking, okay. Considering how much pressure our government was under to perform, and NASA was under to perform, because there was this inbred necessary need to beat the Russians, because Russians had already showed up the West by putting Sputnik in orbit and orbiting the first dog and even the first person. So we were going to be the first people on the moon. Hell or high water. And we had a lot of problems getting to that point. The Apollo program, was built on the backs of a lot of problems, a lot of failures, and a lot of mistakes, and a lot of we learned from that. Let's do something a little different. We're back to that full circle of the closed minds. And you find this in academia. You also find it in science. You find it in politics. You also find it in people. A lot of people simply refuse to believe their face. You put their hand in front of their face and they'll deny the hand's there, or they'll deny it's their hand, because they're living in some weird world that only they understand, or only they can only rationalize for their own sanity. Anyway, so this feller supposedly faked this. There's a whole lot of experts, or would-be experts, that believe that this is actually a legitimate video. This film was shot, that this was an actual creature and not a person in a suit. I think it was fake. I think it was a very elaborate fake for its time, that they thought it out. Well, let's make it a female. I don't know why they would think that. Or this dude's wife, is wearing the suit, because he's filming and she's playing the part. We'll never, that. Truth of that is going to be, we'll never know the truth. I mean, that's just the realities of fact. But this, and even in commercial ventures, we now have Sasquatch soap and man body products. I mean, it's such an iconic mythology that you want to embrace it. You want it to exist. I would be utterly terrified to come face to face with anything that looked like this in the wilderness, out and alone. I would be terrified to find it in my backyard, and I'm looking at it through a window. So we're back to that. Excuse me. Come back around circle. With all the cameras, the door cameras, the phone cameras, the street cameras, traffic control, trail cameras, all this stuff, and yet we have absolutely nothing. We have more videos of UFOs than we do Bigfoot. Now, it's possible that Bigfoot was dying out, and they might be dead. That we might have managed to totally destroy the ecosystem that they needed to thrive on, or because we pushed back into the wilderness, even the quote pristine wilderness, there just isn't enough territory to support a viable population, and they were already in decline and have continued to do so, and that's why there's fewer and fewer quote sightings. Although stuff still keeps cropping up, people still think they see things, and perhaps they do. Perhaps they do. I don't know if anybody could. I mean, as a kid, there was always the stories, and you had to take the stories as you get older for what they were, just a way of tweaking your nose and entertaining you as a kid, or entertaining themselves. Well, they think they're, the older generation get one over on Junior because Junior's buying this hook, line, and sinker crap. You would think there would be more evidence. Fibers, hair, nesting sites, feces. Should find feces. Finds lots of feces. And of course, the detractors will say, well, you can't tell their feces from a bear. Bullshit. I say bullshit. I mean, we know the difference between orangutan feces and gorilla feces. The professionals do. They know damn well the difference. They damn well know the difference between the great apes' feces and human feces. That's part of their thing. That's part of their gig. But boy, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool to have a race of Chewbacca's running around on Earth, and somehow we could all be buddies? There is a fantasy role-playing game put out by a company called Catalyst Game Labs that goes back to the 80s, called Shadowrun. And in there they show Sasquatches as actually quite intelligent beings and all about nature. They communicate with a sign language instead of verbally. And I kind of like that. I grant you, I know it's a game and it's fantasy, but I kind of like it that way. This idea that maybe they're aliens. So these aliens and these big hairy aliens just randomly pick really remote areas to go hang out in. Maybe they're out there doing, I don't know what. They're aliens. I don't think that's. Excuse me. I do not think they're aliens. I'd be more inclined to believe that they're some sort of lost branch of the human history than I would, or one of the a now or nearly extinct big ape, than I would by them being aliens. I just don't get. I don't see that connection. That doesn't mean that I'm right. This is just my opinion. It's just my opinion on it. Now, whether or not they're Neanderthals. Now, see, I heard that a couple times over the years, and until recently, I started doing a little more watching videos. When I'm at work, I have a lot of time while I'm driving between customers and stuff, and so I watch these. I listen to them. Be specific there. Excuse me. I listen to them. I like the podcast, and I'm not sitting there watching while I drive, but I listen to them, and I've been listening to quite a few of these over the last few weeks, and I think that it's quite probable that the Sasquatch could very well be descended from one of the human sub-branches. And Neanderthal is like the other path not taken. Homo sapiens somehow broke off from the normal evolutionary track and boomed up much faster than the others, outpaced all the apes and stuff. And then once they did, they just started seeing the quote feral humans as a threat, and systematically wiped them out whenever they had a chance. The Neanderthals are, from everything the bones and the anthropologists or whatever say, these are some pretty beefy bastards. I mean, they are strong. We assume pretty hairy. Capable of doing things that would take 2 or 3 humans to do, physically speaking. You would not want to get in a fight with one personally. Also are tool makers, tool users, which gives them an above average an intelligence level that's above the actual apes. It makes them some real characters. Anyway, you don't hear very few sightings or stories in the mainline media on Bigfoots at all. It's very rare. Even YouTube and all the podcasts, unless you find somebody who are aficionados or believers or wannabe believers or nuts, or people like me who fit into all those categories. It's just, I don't know. I want to believe in them. I really do. And part of me is thinking, I hope they are out there. Just maybe someday soon, somebody will catch one of these boogers in broad daylight or in a well-lit night area at night on a camera that ain't been doctored, right? What do you think about that? What do you think about the Sasquatch and the the Bigfoots, the Yetis? Do you think they exist? Do you think that they may have existed at one point? Are they aliens? Are they Neanderthals? Are they, great apes? Are they something yet to be defined? Because that's a possibility too. We don't think about that, but it's a possibility that that other progressions have gotten as far as today, and it's just an evolution of the great apes that would have, given time, become a, some kind of sapient being, an intelligent thinking individual. Or they could be bloody well intelligent now and smart enough to know not to mess with crap they don't know about. Anyway, once again, what's your opinion on these guys? I really have always had a fascination with them, and wished partly that I would get to see one. But then I think, no, because I hear a lot of horror stories about them. Anyhow, I'm Rick. You're not. That was a little missy. Till next time, y'all have a great weekend. It is the first weekend of May here in Iowa, 2024. And it's kind of a drizzly, dreary day out there. Y'all have a good, great day, great weekend. It just irritates me to no end.